room. I am honored to have you here as our guests and to speak to you during this time. This is a time like no other, time like no other in the Jewish people, in world history. And, to take some time together to talk to one another and to speak words of Torah is so important to come together and with our thoughts and our tefillot and our Torah. This evening shiur is in memory of a hero. Today we mourn the burial of Hai Arbesfeld. Hai Arbesfeld just yesterday passed away. He was a leader of our community, someone for whom I deeply loved, someone who was beloved to everyone at Yeshiva University, and he will be deeply, deeply missed. We'll have other times to memorialize Hai appropriately, but I wanted to dedicate our learning this evening to Hai's memory. We live in a time like no other. The news is grim. The numbers are staggering. The destruction left in the wake of this invisible invader is beyond comprehension. Thank God many of us are able to sit at home maintaining safety precautions. But even so, the anxiety and sadness, as each of us knows of a loved one, of a friend, or of a neighbor who has either passed away or is currently fighting for his or her life. I have never before better understood what the night of Pesach must have been like in Egypt as we understand it today. The Torah describes that there was a mashchis, there was a destroyer who was let loose to plague the houses of Egypt. All of Egypt were trembling in fear and wailing in mourning. Locked inside their homes, the Jews were surrounded by terror, uncertain about their fate. At that time, Moshe showed them the way forward. He instructed them in God's teachings and inspired them with a vision of the dawn of redemption. Moshe is certainly the hero of Pesach. But interestingly, his name is not mentioned in the HaGadol. And what I want to discuss with you this evening is who is the hero of the HaGadol. Moshe and Aaron, heroes of Pesach for sure. But who are the heroes of the HaGadol? Now, in order to follow along, I've put some source sheets, a source sheet out in attached to the link. So if you're on the YouTube page, you can find the source sheet. You'll see that we have 5 pages of source sheets. 5 pages of source sheets that I think go about over 20 sources. We will not be doing all of them. Do not worry. But I give you these source sheets so that afterwards you can continue our learning together if you want to follow up on the sources that we skipped to deepen what we've been doing together. So if you look at the source sheet and look at source number 1, the first source is the Haggadah of Pesach, the Haggadah that we say. And by the underlines, we know the famous passages that the Haggadah tells us that even if everyone is a sage and everyone is a scholar, you still need to tell the whole story of Mitzrayim all throughout the night. Maisa, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, Sheim Mesubim b'Bnei Brak. The story the Haggadah tells of the 5 great Tanaim, the 5 great sages who were sitting in Bnei Brak. Vayimesaprim b'tiyas Mitzrayim kol oto halayla at shabo talmideim v'amru lahem Rabbeinu hagi zman kriyas shema shel shacharis. And they stayed all night telling the story of the Exodus. Right? We all know this famous passage in the Haggadah, the 5 rabbis telling the story. Now, interestingly, there was another tradition of a very similar story. but yet it's interesting because of the differences. If you look at source number 2, the Tosefta says, Chayev Adam Asok Behilchot HaPesach Kol Halayla, that one is obligated to learn all the laws of Pesach, and Pesach refers to Carbon Pesach, all night. Maisa Rabbi Gamliel Uzakanim Sheyim Subim Bebeit Baitos Ben Zonin Belud. It tells the story of Rabbi Gamliel, and he was sitting with the elders in Lud, Vayasukin Belchas Pesach Kol Halayla Ad Krot HaGever, and he was learning with his friends the laws of Carbon Pesach all night until the morning came. So if you look at these stories, you see that there's a parallel. You have great Tanaim, who were up all night on Pesach. One group was doing the laws of Pesach, of Carbon Pesach, and the other group was telling the story of Pesach. So it's similar and yet different. Now, it's not a coincidence that the name of the person who's on the other side of this is Rabbi Gamliel. Now, who is Rabbi Gamliel? And who are the 5 rabbis? Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Who are these rabbis? And when did they all live? So they all lived after the destruction of the temple. Now, try to picture the scene. The whole history of the Jewish people, all of the Torah, everything that they've been taught their whole lives, were focused on the Mikdash. Bringing the Karbanot to the Mikdash, the Avodah in the Mikdash, the centerpiece of all of Judaism was the Mikdash. Suddenly, in 70, the Mikdash was destroyed. Jerusalem was burnt, and the people were exiled. Can you imagine living in such a time? The heart of the Jewish people were taken away. What was salvaged was the great Tanaim. Tein li Yavneh v'chachameh was the sages who continued our tradition. Now, these sages were split into different groups. Now, here we know a famous story where Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi when he insulted Rabbi Yeshua, who's one of the people in the other groups, and they deposed Rabbi Gamliel. A famous story in Masechet Brachos. They deposed Rabbi Gamliel. So Rabbi Gamliel was on one side, and there was another group of Rabbi Yeshua. They deposed him and they put in his place Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And Rabbi Yeshua's student, we know famously, was Rabbi Akiva. So this group of scholars that formed, they were in one group, were separate and apart, that Rabbi Gamliel was in a different group. And what we see by these stories is that the different groups of the Tanaim decided to commemorate and celebrate Pesach, focused in different ways. The 5 rabbis focused on telling the story of Mitzrayim. Rabbi Gamliel focused on the Carbon Pesach, of learning the laws of the Carbon Pesach. Now, this is not a coincidence. This reflects a very different orientation for how one should celebrate Pesach after the Carbon. Rabbi Gamliel thought that the highlight of Pesach is the Carbon Pesach. And even at a time when the Carbon doesn't exist, we still cannot forget the Pesach. We still need to focus on Carbon Pesach. And if we don't have the Carbon Pesach itself, we need to learn the laws of the Carbon Pesach. The other rabbis thought that if we don't have the Carbon Pesach, at the very least what we can do is we can tell the story. We can tell the story of Mitzrayim, tell the story of our people. Now we see this debate or this division throughout the HaGadol. So for example, the Mishnah in Pesachim says, Manishtana, it names all the 4 questions of the Manishtana, and they actually gives 2 answers. The first answer of what's the difference between this night and all other nights, the Mishnah says, is that you're Doresh Arami Ovid Avi, Umatchil Bignus Umasayim B'Shevach. The first answer is that you have to tell the story of Pesach. You have to learn the story of Pesach, begin with the shameful parts and end with the happy parts. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how you answer Manishtana. Then the Mishnah says, the Rabbi Gamliel says that you have to say 3 things. And if you don't say the 3 things, you don't fulfill your obligation. What are the 3 things that Rabbi Gamliel says? Who remembers? Can you call on somebody in YouTube Live? So who remembers? Exactly. Right. Rabbi Gamliel says the 3 things are Pesach, Matzah, and Mar. You have to talk about these 3 things. Now, why these 3 things? Or if you think about it, all of these things are really tied to the Karban Pesach. That al matzah umar michlu, how are you supposed to eat the Karban Pesach? You're supposed to wrap it with matzah, which is at the time was soft bread, not our hard Streitz matzah or shmur matzah, but soft, unleavened bread, and mar. And you put it with the meat, and you put it with the Karban Pesach, you put it in this lafa, and you eat it. And that was the Karban Pesach. And while the first opinion, which is really represented Rabbi Akiva, the Stam Mishnah, talked about telling the story of Mitzrayim, Rabbi Gamliel spoke about the Karban Pesach. The Karban Pesach, according to Rabbi Gamliel, was the center, always, every year of the holiday of Pesach, and even in the time of destruction, it still needs to be the center of the holiday of Pesach. And if we can't eat it specifically, we'll talk about it, we'll learn the halachos, that's what we'll do. The rabbis and then said, no, we don't have the Karban Pesach. We need to find something new. We need to talk. We need to tell the story. We need to change a bit, to shift, to come to the place where Pesach is meaningful again for our people. So even though before there was always a mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, of telling the story, but telling the story became much more prominent in their eyes after the Chorban, after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And what you see in the Haggadah, what you see is the story unfold of how the Jews should celebrate Pesach in light of the destruction of the Chorban, in a time of absolute abject sadness and tragedy. When the temple was destroyed, the Jews and the Tanam specifically found the way to continue, commemorate, and celebrate the holiday of Pesach. Now, who do we paskin like? Do we hold like Rabbi Gamliel on the one hand, or do we hold like the stories of Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar Bezaria on the other? And I think the answer is both. We hold like both. And we see reflections of both. That in the Haggadah, we do both things. We are Doresh Arami Ovid Avi. We are Matchil Bignus Umasayim B'Shevach. We do that. And at the same time, we tell Rabbi Gamliel the 3 things that Rabbi Gamliel used to say. We tell that as well. This is the debate. And the psak is like a good Jewish story. When we say he's right, they're both right. And we do both. But the upshot of the story, and what's really amazing about the story, is that if you ask the question of who's the hero of the Haggadah, who would you say is the hero of the Haggadah? Who's the hero? So look at the names that's mentioned in the Haggadah. Who is mentioned most in the Haggadah? Moshe isn't mentioned at all in the Haggadah. You know who's mentioned most in the Haggadah? It's the Tanaim. It's the Tanaim. It's the rabbis who lived after the destruction of the Mikdash. They're the ones who are mentioned most. It's one of the most fascinating aspects of the Haggadah that we say, Chayav Adam liros es atzmo ki hu yatsa miMitzrayim. That everyone is obligated to see him or herself as if they left Mitzrayim. So if you think about that, you think that what are we obligated to? To picture ourselves as if we live through Mitzrayim and see ourselves as if we actually went through Mitzrayim. And that's true. But if you look at the Haggadah, what we're actually doing is we're not imagining ourselves as if we left Mitzrayim. We're imagining ourselves as the Tanaim imagine themselves as if they left Mitzrayim. For example, we recline when we drink wine. Why do we recline when we drink wine? So we know we recline in order to show freedom. When was drinking wine in a reclining position an expression of freedom? When was it an expression of freedom? So it wasn't in the time of Mitzrayim, in the Torah. It was in the Roman period. It was in the time of the Tanaim. That's in the time of the Tanaim. That's what they said. That's how you express freedom, as you're reclining. So we imagine ourselves as the Tanaim living in that time period, imagine themselves leaving Mitzrayim. And that's what freedom is. So we tell the story, not just of Mitzrayim, but we also tell the story of the rabbis. We tell the story of the generation of Jews who survived the destruction of the Mikdash. Underlying the whole Haggadah, there are two stories in the Haggadah. There's the story that we're saying overtly, which is the story of Mitzrayim, and then there's the story of this incredible generation, or generations, that were able to teach us how to continue for Judaism to flourish even after such tragedy as the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. And then at the end of the Haggadah, what do we say to celebrate? L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuya. That we bless and hope and prayer that in the coming year we'll return to Yerushalayim. We're not returning back to Mitzrayim, obviously. We're coming back to the time of the Mikdash. The Mikdash left us, we're in Galut, and we're coming back to the time of the Mikdash. There's a double layer throughout the whole Haggadah. There's a layer of Mitzrayim, and then there's another layer of this generation, this great generation, that were able to transform the Jewish people to survive in times of turmoil, in times of tragedy, in times of destruction. There's a story within a story. Who are the heroes of the Haggadah? So, of course, it's Moshe, of course, it's Aaron, and fundamentally, of course, it's chiefly Hashem. But in addition, it's also these great rabbis and this generation that were able to transition in this time of tragedy. You know, I think about this a lot when I think about today. Who are the heroes today? Who are the heroes today? We are living in a time of unfathomable difficulty. The losses and the consequences, the anxiety and the sadness, the uncertainty of today. It's simply unprecedented. It's unprecedented. We've never seen this. And who are the heroes? Who are the heroes? And I think as we work through this, we know that the heroes are certainly everyone on the front lines. Our doctors and nurses and healthcare providers, the people that literally leave their house every day to go to help others, putting themselves at risk. Those are heroes. The heroes are those people with essential jobs who leave their homes in order to do their work, to help others. Those are heroes. I would say on a different level, it's also heroic, the people who stay home so that they don't put others at risk. That's also giving to the tzibur, ensuring that the collective, the low plug, that not distinguishing, staying at home and not putting others at risk. All these people, certainly the healthcare work, these are heroes. But there are other heroes today as well. There are other heroes too. And I have to say, I'm so proud of all of our alumni and all of our friends who have stepped up in this time. It's amazing, the incredible chesed and the kindness. The heroes are the people that are thinking of others, that are reaching out to others during this time, that are not just thinking about protecting themselves, but looking around their block, looking around at others in need, and making sure that everyone is cared for. The heroes, I think, are our rabbinic and educational graduates, the rabbis and mechanchim in the fields. They're heroes. What they are doing to create the support system of the spiritual and emotional support system for our community and our children. The Herculean task of closing all of our facilities all over the country, all of the high schools, all of the day schools, all of the shuls. The courageous decisions that were made. And then to tend and care for each individual. They're heroes. They're heroes. And heroes include our Roshei Yeshiva. Our Roshei Yeshiva at Yeshiva University, at Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchana. They've showed incredible leadership through their sensitive and life-affirming halachic decisions, which have been a defining feature in helping our community navigate through these uncharted waters. They have made heroic decisions, literally ensuring the closing of the shuls and the schools a week earlier than most, saving lives, highlighting the preciousness of human life as the chief value in our value system. I am so proud of our Yeshiva University community who have shown us the way of how to lead with our values. And I have to tell you very personally, similarly, I feel great pride in watching our students. For the students, and it gives me great comfort in the future as we educate the leaders in the world of tomorrow. The students who are not just continuing their studies, taking on additional learning, the refuah, for the healing of a wounded world, who are giving of themselves in chesed, calling the elderly and the homebound, doing video conferencing with public school kids who otherwise cannot get an education. Like the level that our students are thinking and helping others at this time, it's heartwarming and encouraging. You know, you can tell a lot about a community by how it responds to crisis. And our community has never been more united and committed to not only weathering this storm, but to building a better future. Who are the heroes of the Haggadah? Who are the heroes of today? It's those that guide us with our Torah values in times of transition and times of difficulty. Those are our heroes. And that's what we celebrate when we celebrate the Haggadah. When we open the Haggadah, we're celebrating Moshe and Aaron. We're celebrating the great Yeshua, the great salvation that came in Mitzrayim. And we're also celebrating the great rabbis and leaders who ensured the transition and the ability of the Jewish people to work through the absolutely horrific, difficult time of the Churban at the time of the destruction of 70. And I would say that very similarly, when we sit around the table this year, we think about Mitzrayim, we think about what we're reading in the Haggadah, the Churban, and we think about the heroes of today, the people who've made a difference in our lives during this most difficult time. And we also think about how we can be heroes, how we can be heroes of the story, what we can do during this time. This is a Pesach like no other. We will be sitting in our homes, some alone, others with their immediate family and only their immediate family. You know, it'll be a Pesach that's tinged with missing people. You know, I have a son. I have 3 sons who are in Israel. 2 of them were able to come to America before Rosh Chodesh Nisan and sit in quarantine for 2 weeks. And Baruch Hashem, they're fine, and they're good, and they're with us. And my 3rd son is in the army, and the army they can't leave the army. And he's in an army base. The first time in my life I'm going to be apart from him. And my parents in Yerushalayim, my in-laws, can't leave their apartment in the Bronx. It's a Pesach like no other. And in this darkness, we still can find joy. There is what to celebrate. But there are people at this time who gives us cause to celebrate. And I think this is our nechama. This is our comfort. Our comfort is that during this time of anxiety and during this time of darkness, is that we are walking through this darkness together as a community, and together with Hashem. There will be an end. There will be a time when this will come to a close. There will be a dawn. There will be a dawn to this darkness. There was a dawn in Mitzrayim. There was the next day in Mitzrayim. There was the next day after the Churban. And there will be a next day after this. And with our values as a compass, and with Hashem's blessing and guidance and protection on Leil Shimurim, we will, Be'ezrat Hashem, greet this new light together. This year, may Hashem bless us with the great bracha that at the end of the Seder, we can all sing and say that Lashana Hazot Yerushalayim Habnuya. I wish each and every one of you Chag Kosher v'Sameach, Pesach of good health, of comfort, of togetherness, as we move through this difficult time to a time of Yeshua and a time of Geula. Lashana Hazot Yerushalayim Habnuya.